From its headquarters in Switzerland, the League of Nations wrung its hands. It did impose economic sanctions, but they had little effect. Mussolini's aggression had revealed two things. The League of Nations, that great hope for peace, was impotent. And both Europe's supposed major powers, the democracies Britain and France, no longer had the stomach for a fight. Both Britain and France had been shattered by World War I, and their economies had never really recovered. Both had witnessed waves of strikes and unrest. Both had suffered mass unemployment, even before the Great Depression. Both also faced the cost of controlling empires, now swollen by taking on Germany's former colonies and the Middle Eastern territories once run by the Turkish Ottoman Empire. And above all, both had been traumatized by the horrific casualties of World War I. A succession of British leaders, Lloyd George, Ramsay MacDonald, and above all Stanley Baldwin, all resolved to keep Britain out of future conflicts. Despite horrific casualties on the Western Front, Britain had ended World War I with a large and very effective conscript army. This was immediately run down to a small professional force designed to police its sprawling empire. And when the Great Depression struck, any ideas of modernizing the army were abandoned. It meant that Britain went into the run-up to war economically and militarily weak. French losses during World War I had been even worse than the British. Ever mistrustful of the Germans, a large conscript army was maintained. But throughout the 1920s, France's birth rate had declined. It became clear that there would be a manpower shortage by the mid to late 1930s. France realized it could never compete with Germany on the size of its army alone. The solution was to adopt an entirely defensive mentality. The Maginot Line, a series of fortifications, was begun in 1930 along the frontier with Germany and ran as far as the Belgian border. There, it theoretically linked up with fortifications planned by the Belgians. This new French military approach meant that France was only capable of waging a defensive war. It just did not have the ability to launch an attack on Italy, even if the British had had the troops to help. And of course, both countries knew that their navies in the Mediterranean were outnumbered by Mussolini's new fleet. So when Italy conquered Abyssinia, it made sense for both powers to do nothing. It just seemed too remote, too much someone else's problem. By now they both had to deal with all the traumas of the Great Depression. That seemed so much more pressing. And above all, they were now faced with a military threat far closer to home. A resurgent and rearming Germany.